The year was 1847, and the American frontier stretched endlessly under a scorching sun that seemed to judge everything beneath it. Along the dusty trails of the Oregon Territory, wagon trains carried dreams westward, dreams of new beginnings, fertile lands, and escape from the harsh realities of Eastern life. But not everyone on these journeys was welcomed with open arms. Some carried burdens that made them outcasts even among fellow travelers. This is the story of Sarah Mitchell, a young woman whose greatest crime was being different in a world that demanded conformity, and Tahu, a Comanche warrior whose understanding of pain would bridge two worlds that society insisted must remain forever apart. What happens when someone's society has discarded finds acceptance in the most unexpected place? What happens when love emerges not from perfection, but from the recognition of shared scars? This is a tale of redemption, courage, and the transformative power of being truly seen by another soul. But before we begin, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're listening from. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Nebraska plains as the Morrison wagon train prepared for another day's journey. 23 wagons formed a rough line, each carrying families, with their hopes packed alongside their possessions. The smell of campfire smoke mixed with dust and the constant lowing of cattle created the familiar symphony of westward migration. Sarah Mitchell sat heavily on the back of the Henderson wagon, her swollen belly making even the simple act of climbing aboard a challenge. At 22, she carried not just a child but the weight of constant scrutiny from her fellow travelers. Her rounded face, softened by pregnancy weight, bore the flush of embarrassment as whispers followed her every movement. "Look at her," hissed Martha Clemens to her neighbor, loud enough for Sarah to hear. 6 months along, and still no husband to claim her. Shameful, if you ask me. "Should have stayed back east where she belongs," added Thomas Brennan, spitting tobacco juice into the dust. "We got enough mouths to feed without taking on charity cases." Sarah's hands instinctively moved to her belly, feeling the gentle kick of her unborn child. She had been traveling with the Henderson family, distant relatives who had reluctantly agreed to take her west after her father's death. But their charity came with a price. Constant reminders of her status as a burden, unwanted and unloved. "Sarah, you're slowing us down again," called out James Henderson from the driver's seat. His voice carried the irritation of a man who had grown tired of explaining her presence to others. "Can't you walk alongside like the other women?" The other women. Sarah glanced at them, wives and daughters who belonged somewhere, who had husbands and fathers to protect them. They walked in small groups, their conversations falling silent whenever she approached. Even the children had learned to avoid her, instructed by their mothers to keep their distance from the fallen woman. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, though she knew her apology would change nothing. She had been apologizing for her existence since she was 14, when her body began to fill out differently from other girls. The extra weight that had made her a target for cruel jokes had only increased during her pregnancy, making her a walking reminder of what proper women should avoid becoming. The wagon lurched forward, and Sarah gripped the sides to steady herself. Each jolt sent pain through her back and reminded her of how much further they still had to travel. Oregon felt like a dream, a place where maybe, just maybe, she could start over without the weight of judgment following her every step. "Mama, why doesn't that lady have a husband?" asked little Emma Brennan, her young voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "Because she made bad choices, sweetheart," came the sharp reply from her mother. "That's why good girls listen to their parents and don't go around with strange men." Sarah's cheeks burned with shame. If only they knew the truth, that she had been the victim, not the willing participant. But who would believe her? A fat, pregnant woman had no credibility against a respected minister's son. She had learned that lesson the hard way back in Missouri. The day wore on with its familiar rhythm of discomfort and isolation. Sarah tried to make herself useful, helping with cooking and mending, but even her attempts at contribution were met with disdain. Her biscuits were too heavy, her stitching too slow, her presence too burdensome for a group already stretched thin by the demands of frontier travel. As evening approached, the wagon train formed its defensive circle. Sarah helped gather buffalo chips for fuel, her movements slower than the others due to her condition. She could feel eyes watching her, measuring her worth, and finding it lacking. "Don't know why we don't just leave her at the next trading post," muttered Frank Morrison, the wagon master, as he thought Sarah was out of earshot. "She's slowing us down, and if we run into hostile Indians, she'll be nothing but a liability." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. The baby kicked inside her as if sensing her distress, and she placed a protective hand over her belly. Whatever happened, she would find a way to survive, for both of them. That night, as the camp settled into an uneasy quiet, Sarah lay awake in her bedroll beneath the Henderson wagon. The stars above seemed cold and distant, offering no comfort to a woman who had learned that the world could be just as harsh as the wilderness they traveled through. She didn't know that somewhere in the darkness beyond the circle of wagons, another pair of eyes was watching, eyes that had seen rejection and pain, eyes that recognized a kindred spirit in the isolated woman who bore her burdens with quiet dignity. The attack came at dawn, when the camp was most vulnerable. Sarah had risen early, as she always did, to help prepare breakfast before the others woke. The mundane task of stirring porridge over the fire had become her small contribution to a group that barely tolerated her presence. She was reaching for more buffalo chips when the first war cry split the morning air. "Indians! Indians!" The shout came from the perimeter guard, but it was already too late. Comanche warriors, painted for war and mounted on swift ponies, burst from the tall grass, where they had been concealed since before dawn. Their strategy was flawless. They had studied the wagon train's routines for days, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Chaos erupted through the camp. Men scrambled for rifles, while women screamed and children cried. Sarah found herself frozen in place, her pregnant body making quick movement impossible. Around her, the Henderson wagon provided little protection as bullets and arrows began to fly. "Sarah, get down!" James Henderson shouted as he dove for his rifle. But Sarah couldn't move fast enough. Her swollen belly and the pain in her back made every motion deliberate and slow. She watched in horror as Martha Clemens, the same woman who had whispered cruel words about her just yesterday, fell with an arrow in her shoulder. The attack was swift and brutal. The Comanche warriors moved with practiced precision, their goal not massacre but intimidation and capture. They had learned that taking prisoners often yielded better results than killing everyone. Hostages could be traded, and fear spread faster than death. Sarah pressed herself against the wagon wheel, her hands protecting her belly as the battle raged around her. She could hear Frank Morrison shouting orders, trying to organize a defense, but the surprise had been too complete. Several wagons were already burning, their contents scattered across the prairie. It was then that she saw him. Among the chaos of the attack, one warrior stood apart from the others. He was tall for a Comanche, his broad shoulders marked with scars that spoke of many battles. His face was painted with black and white stripes, but his eyes were different. Where the others showed the fierce joy of battle, his held something else, something that looked almost like sadness. Their gazes met across the burning camp, and time seemed to slow. Sarah saw him taking in her condition, her obvious pregnancy, the way she was trying to protect her unborn child even as danger surrounded her. His horse danced beneath him, eager to continue the fight, but the warrior remained still, studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. The battle was turning. The wagon train's defenders were putting up fierce resistance, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Several Comanche warriors had been wounded, and their leader was calling for withdrawal. The raid had achieved its purpose. They had captured supplies and demonstrated their power. There was no need for further bloodshed. But as the warriors began to pull back, the tall one with the scarred shoulders did something unprecedented. He rode directly toward Sarah, his lance lowered but not threatening. The other travelers who saw him coming screamed warnings, but there was no time to react. He stopped his horse just feet away from her, so close she could see the intricate beadwork on his war shirt and the old bullet scar on his left arm. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the pregnant white woman who had been rejected by her own people, and the Comanche warrior who carried his own deep wounds. Then he spoke, his voice carrying clearly across the camp in accented but clear English. Wife. The single word fell like a thunderclap. Every person in the camp, who could still hear, froze. Sarah's mouth fell open in shock. The warrior's own companions turned to stare at him, clearly as surprised as everyone else. Wife, he repeated, more firmly this time. He gestured toward Sarah with his lance, not threatening but claiming. She comes with me. Now wait just a minute. Frank Morrison started to object, his rifle still trained on the warrior. But the Comanche held up his hand, and when he spoke again, his words carried the weight of absolute authority. She is mine. My wife. I take her now. Sarah found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. I don't understand. The warrior's expression softened slightly, and for a moment, the war paint couldn't hide the gentleness in his eyes. You are alone. Your people, they do not want you. I see this. I know this pain. He placed a hand over his heart. You come with me. You will be safe. Your child will be safe. The implications of his words hit the camp like a physical blow. Here was a Comanche warrior, in the middle of a raid, claiming a white woman as his wife. It was unprecedented, impossible, and yet it was happening. Sarah, don't listen to him. James Henderson called out, though his voice lacked conviction. He's a savage. He'll kill you. But Sarah was looking into the warrior's eyes, and she saw something there that she had never seen in the faces of her own people: acceptance. He wasn't looking at her with disgust or pity. He was looking at her like she was worth something. What's your name? She asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Tahu, he replied. It means beloved in my language. What are you called? Sarah, she whispered. He nodded as if her name held significance. Sarah, you will come with me, Sarah. You will be my wife, and your child will be as my own child. This I promise before the sky and the earth. The other Comanche warriors were growing restless, their leader calling for them to leave. But Tahu remained focused on Sarah, waiting for her answer. She looked around the camp, at the people who had made her feel worthless, who had called her a burden, who had whispered about leaving her behind. Then she looked at this warrior who had seen her pain and offered her not just protection, but belonging. She began, then stopped. The magnitude of the choice before her was overwhelming. Everything she had ever known, everything she had been taught about right and wrong, told her to refuse. But her heart, her tired and broken heart, was whispering something different. I'll come with you, she said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. The gasp that went up from the camp was audible even over the crackling of burning wagons. But Tahu's face broke into the first genuine smile Sarah had seen from anyone in weeks. Then you are my wife, he said with simple conviction. And I am your husband. Come. The Comanche village that became Sarah's new home was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Located in a protected valley along the Canadian River, it was a temporary settlement that could be moved quickly if necessary. Buffalo hide teepees formed neat rows, and the smell of wood smoke mixed with the scent of prairie grass and horses. Sarah's arrival caused a sensation. A pregnant white woman claiming to be the wife of Tahu, one of their respected war chiefs, was unprecedented. But Tahu's word carried weight in the tribe, and his claim was accepted, even if it raised eyebrows and sparked whispered conversations. She is my wife, Tahu announced to the tribal council on their first night. She carries a child, and both are under my protection. Any who would harm them answer to me. The chief, an elderly man named Burning Sky, studied Sarah with curious eyes. You choose this freely, white woman. Sarah, still overwhelmed by the rapid changes in her life, nodded. Yes, I choose this freely. Then you are welcome in our village, Burning Sky declared. But know that being wife to a Comanche warrior is not easy. Our ways are not your ways. You must learn, and you must prove yourself worthy of the trust Tahu has placed in you. The first weeks were the hardest. Sarah had to learn everything: how to prepare food the Comanche way, how to maintain a teepee, how to move and behave appropriately in the village. Her pregnancy made some tasks difficult, but she was determined to prove herself. Tahu was patient with her struggles, helping her understand the complex social structure of the tribe. He taught her basic Comanche words and phrases, showing her how to prepare buffalo meat and construct the framework of a teepee. But it was the quiet moments between them that revealed the depth of his character. "Why did you claim me?" Sarah asked one evening as they sat by their fire. Her belly had grown larger, and the baby was active, making sleep difficult. Tahu was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "When I was young," he finally said, "I was captured by Mexican slavers. They kept me for 3 years, working in their mines. I was beaten, starved, treated like an animal. When I finally escaped, my own people looked at me differently. I was tainted, broken." He showed her a scar on his back, a long white line that spoke of brutality. "I know what it is to be alone among your own people. I know what it is to be judged for things beyond your control." Sarah reached out tentatively and touched the scar. "I'm sorry that happened to you." "It made me who I am," Tahu replied. "It taught me to see the worth in people that others overlook. When I saw you in that camp, I saw myself. I saw someone who needed what I needed, acceptance." Their relationship deepened gradually. Sarah learned that Tahu was not just a warrior, but a man of deep thoughtfulness. He had never married because, as he explained, no Comanche woman had been willing to accept his past. His experiences with the Mexican slavers had left him with scars that went deeper than the physical ones. "You speak English so well," Sarah observed one day as he helped her gather herbs for cooking. "I learned it from a trader who was kind to me," Tahu explained. He said that understanding other people's words was the first step to understanding their hearts. I think he was right. As Sarah's pregnancy progressed, she found herself accepted by many of the women in the village. Running Deer, Tahu's sister, became her closest friend and teacher. She was the one who explained Comanche customs around childbirth and helped Sarah prepare for the arrival of her baby. "Your child will be blessed," Running Deer told her one afternoon as they worked on baby clothes. "Tahu has no children of his own, but he has so much love to give. He will be a good father." "He already is," Sarah replied, thinking of how gently Tahu spoke to her belly each night, telling the baby stories in Comanche and English. But their happiness was not without challenges. Some members of the tribe remained suspicious of Sarah's presence, seeing her as a potential threat or spy. There were also practical concerns. The U.S. Army was becoming more aggressive in their campaigns against the Comanche, and having a white woman in the village could complicate matters. One evening, as Sarah was preparing their meal, she overheard a heated discussion between Tahu and some of the other warriors. They were arguing about an upcoming raid, and she heard her name mentioned several times. "They think I'm a liability," she said to Tahu later, when they were alone in their teepee. Tahu's jaw tightened. "They are afraid. Fear makes people say foolish things." "Maybe they're right," Sarah said quietly. "Maybe I am putting everyone in danger just by being here." Tahu turned to face her fully, his expression intense. "Listen to me, Sarah. You are my wife. You belong here as much as anyone. Your child will be raised as a Comanche child, with all the rights and protections that brings. Do not let fear poison your mind." But Sarah's fears were not unfounded. The next morning, scouts brought word that a cavalry unit was approaching the valley. The village would need to move quickly, and Sarah's advanced pregnancy would make travel difficult. "We can move slowly," Tahu assured her as the tribe prepared to relocate. "The child will wait." But as if summoned by his words, Sarah felt the first sharp pain of labor. She gasped, clutching her belly, and Tahu's face went pale. "The baby," she whispered. "It's coming." The timing couldn't have been worse. With cavalry approaching and the village needing to move, Sarah was about to give birth in the middle of a crisis. But as she looked into Tahu's eyes, she saw not fear but determination. "Then we will meet this challenge as we have met all others," he said firmly. Together. The labor pains came fast and hard, as if the baby sensed the urgency of the situation. Sarah gripped Tahu's hand as Running Deer and the other women quickly set up a birth area in the teepee. Outside, the sounds of the village breaking camp created a constant backdrop of activity and tension. "The soldiers are still hours away," one of the scouts reported to Tahu. "But we need to move soon if we're going to reach the hidden canyon before they arrive." Tahu nodded but didn't leave Sarah's side. "The village goes. We will follow when we can." "Tahu," You can't stay behind, protested Red Wolf, one of the war chiefs. If the soldiers find you here with her, then they find me. Tahu cut him off. I will not abandon my wife when she brings our child into the world. Sarah heard the exchange despite her pain, and her heart swelled with emotion. Here was a man who was willing to risk everything for her, something she had never experienced before. Through another contraction, she squeezed his hand. Don't risk the others for me, she gasped. You are my heart, Tahu replied simply. Without you, there's no me to risk. The birth was difficult but swift. As the sun reached its zenith, Sarah's cries mixed with the sounds of the departing village. Running Deer proved to be an excellent midwife, her calm competence helping Sarah through the worst of it. And then, with a final push and a cry that seemed to encompass all her pain and hope, Sarah brought her daughter into the world. The baby was perfect, small but healthy, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. As Running Deer cleaned the child and Sarah caught her breath, Tahu looked down at both of them with an expression of pure wonder. She is beautiful, he whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. What will you call her? Sarah looked at her daughter, then at the man who had claimed them both when the world had rejected them. Hope, she said. Her name is Hope. Tahu smiled, understanding the significance. Hope. Yes, she brings hope to all of us. But their moment of joy was interrupted by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. The cavalry had arrived sooner than expected, and the village was not yet completely evacuated. Through the teepee flap, Sarah could see blue uniforms and the glint of weapons. Tahu, she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. He was already moving, reaching for his weapons. Stay here. Keep the baby quiet. No, Sarah said, struggling to sit up despite her exhaustion. If they find you here alone, they'll kill you. But if they see me... She was right, and they both knew it. A white woman with a newborn baby would be seen as a victim to be rescued, not a threat to be eliminated. But it would also mean the end of their life together. I won't let you sacrifice yourself, Tahu said firmly. And I won't let you die for me, Sarah replied with equal determination. There has to be another way. Outside, they could hear the cavalry sergeant shouting orders. Search every teepee. Look for signs of weapons or recent habitation. Sarah made a decision that would require all the courage she had gained over the past months. Help me up, she said to Tahu. We face this together. With Running Deer's help, Sarah managed to stand, cradling baby Hope in her arms. Tahu stood beside her, his hand resting on his knife, but not drawing it. Together, they walked out of the teepee to face whatever came next. The cavalry sergeant, a weathered man named Patterson, stopped short when he saw them. His eyes took in the scene, a white woman, obviously just having given birth, standing next to a Comanche warrior in what was clearly a gesture of unity rather than captivity. Ma'am, Patterson said carefully, are you hurt? Are you being held against your will? Sarah looked at Tahu, then back at the sergeant. No, she said clearly. I am not being held against my will. This is my husband, and this is our daughter. The statement sent a ripple of shock through the cavalry unit. Patterson's face hardened. Ma'am, you've obviously been through a trauma. These savages have. These savages have shown me more kindness and respect than my own people ever did, Sarah interrupted, her voice gaining strength. I chose to be here. I chose him, and I choose to stay. Patterson looked from Sarah to Tahu, clearly struggling with how to handle the situation. Ma'am, I have orders to escort any white captives back to safety. I can't just leave you here. Then you'll have to take me by force, Sarah said, stepping closer to Tahu. Because I'm not leaving willingly. The standoff stretched for long moments. The other soldiers were clearly uncomfortable with the situation, and Patterson himself seemed torn between his duty and the obvious reality that Sarah was not a victim in need of rescue. Finally, it was Tahu who spoke. She is free to go if she chooses, he said in clear English. I will not hold her against her will, but she is my wife, and this child is my daughter. If she stays, we are a family. If she goes, I will not try to stop her. Patterson turned to Sarah. Ma'am, I strongly advise you to come with us. This is no life for a white woman and her child." Sarah looked down at baby Hope, then at Tahu, then back at the sergeant. "You're wrong," she said quietly. "This is exactly the life for us. We've found where we belong." The sergeant studied her face for a long moment, then sighed. "I can't force you to come if you're determined to stay. But I want it on record that you were offered safe passage." "It's on record," Sarah confirmed. As the cavalry prepared to leave, Patterson approached Sarah one more time. "Ma'am, if you ever change your mind, if you ever need help, there are people who will come for you." Sarah smiled, and for the first time in her adult life, it was a smile of complete confidence. "Thank you, Sergeant, but I'm exactly where I need to be." After the soldiers left, Sarah and Tahu stood together in the empty village, holding their daughter. The rest of the tribe would return soon, but for now, they were alone with their new family. "Do you regret it?" Tahu asked quietly. "Choosing this life?" Sarah looked at him, this man who had seen her worth when no one else would, who had offered her not just protection but love, who had just risked everything to stay with her during their daughter's birth. Then she looked at Hope, their daughter who would grow up knowing she was wanted and loved. "Never," she said firmly. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Tahu smiled and wrapped his arms around both of them. "Then we begin our life together as a family. Hope will grow up knowing she is loved by two peoples, two cultures. She will be strong. Like her father," Sarah said, leaning into his embrace. "Like her mother," Tahu corrected. "You are the strongest person I know, Sarah. You chose love over fear, hope over despair. Our daughter will learn that from you." As the sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Sarah felt a peace she had never known before. She had been mocked, rejected, and cast aside by the world she was born into. But in finding love with Tahu, she had found herself. Their path wouldn't be easy. They would face challenges from both the white and Comanche worlds, but they would face them together, as a family bonded not by convention but by choice, not by society's expectations, but by love's truth. And in the years to come, their daughter Hope would indeed grow up strong, bridging two worlds and carrying the legacy of parents who proved that love knows no boundaries, that acceptance can be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes being chosen by someone who understands pain is the greatest gift of all. Sarah had learned that she was not a burden to be tolerated, but a treasure to be cherished. And in that knowledge, she found not just love, but the strength to love herself. Years later, when Hope was old enough to understand, Sarah would tell her the story of how she came to be born into two worlds, but belonged fully to both. She would learn that strength comes not from conforming to others' expectations, but from finding the courage to be authentically yourself. And sometimes, late at night by the fire, Tahu would tell Hope stories of her brave mother, the woman who chose love over fear, who found her worth not in the approval of others, but in the recognition of her own value, and who taught him that the greatest act of love is seeing someone for who they truly are. Their love story became legend in both cultures, a testament to the power of acceptance, the courage of choice, and the truth that love, real love, transcends all boundaries. If you like this story, leave your opinion in the comments and, of course, leave a like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Big hug and see you soon.